So far for phase rotation, which is, as I said, not too complicated, but now looking at dynamics, it's becoming a little bit more difficult. Now just let's switch back to looking at all the putts at the same time. And in the past, we looked at backswing and forward swing differently. Now we connect backswing and forward swing. And what is the difference? Well, the difference is that we can now connect the acceleration from backswing into forward swing directly. Why can we do that? Well, at this point in time, we started presenting here not the absolute rotation. We display now the directional acceleration, which is negative in the backswing and which is then positive speed in the forward swing. So this is now a movement to the right. If I'm right-hander, conventional type of putting. So this is the backswing is to the right and this is to the left. So now I get a negative speed to the right and I get a positive speed to the left. Now for the acceleration, it's a little bit tricky because what is acceleration in the backswing is acceleration. What is deceleration in the backswing is acceleration in the forward swing and the other way around. Why is this? So I think the best way to explain it is to talk about force. So if you add force, you would start to accelerate. If you add force into direction of movement, you also have a positive directional acceleration. So if I now look at the backswing and I add force into the backswing, then I see that I start accelerating to the right into the direction of my backswing. Now, if I am now in the deceleration phase of my backswing, then I reduce force into the direction of the backswing. Or what you can see, if you clearly look at this picture, you even activate force into the direction of the forward swing already. So deceleration in the backswing, which is force into the direction to the left, and acceleration in the forward swing, which is also force to the left, can then directly be connected at top of backswing, which at the first glance look a little bit weird. Why is deceleration and acceleration directly meeting at top of backswing? Well, because both have a force which is pointing to the left. And acceleration in the backswing and deceleration in the forward swing is of having a force which is both pointing into the right. And what you can see now far better than before is that if we connect at top of backswing, so if we do not separate it into backswing and forward swing, if we connect it, then you can see that the level of acceleration at start of downswing depends on the level of deceleration at the end of backswing. And this is what we always said before. We always said, well, if you want to constantly accelerate into the downswing, you need already to activate forces before end of backswing. Otherwise, you would have rather a stop at top of backswing, which is actually not there. And there are models which show that the activation of a force into direction of downswing is normally done before top of backswing. So the putter moves even at the top of backswing slightly to the right, and at this point you already activated a force into the opposite direction, which is increasing the deceleration. Like you see here, there's already a little bit more peak here. Certainly if you want to end up with a plateau for the acceleration into the downswing, you need to even add more force just before top of backswing. Well, this is then certainly treated more in depth in our certification courses, which you might have already visited. Yeah, I will just show tour data afterwards. Now, everything you see now for the part which is in the forward swing is exactly the same. So in the section for the forward swing, you now see we have again this type of acceleration pattern where we would then interpolate the acceleration to impact with a line, and then identifying if this is a flat or an increasing or even a decreasing, which is not too often. Normally it's a flat or slightly increasing acceleration to impact, and then we would see the release through impact where you leave this linear line and it drops. It's still at impact in the acceleration phase, but it's on a lower level. But you clearly see this is a release. So at the point where you leave this red line, you stop adding force, and then you see the release where the putter is still accelerating, but at a lower level on its own through impact. And this release is then transferred into deceleration, where you then work against movement again with adding force into the opposite direction to get to a stop. And then if this line is above the zero line, you are still on the acceleration side. So this is now an amateur, and we can now clearly see again, if we look at one single putt, actually what it's like if you look more accurately to one single putt. And then we added some small, we did a small difference here. So for the timing, we added this tempo meter, put it that way up here, which is normally a different graphics or inside of a different, oops, sorry, inside of a different tile. So we have now a speed meter for your tempo for the backswing, which is in this case intermediate if you're on the in the gray range, which is slow because this is at the slow side of the gray range. So time of impact is slow, and forward swing would be inside of the range at the lower part, but still inside of the range. So it would be still having kind of a neutral pace. Okay, now looking at a tour player, and let's start, well, could take anyone. So Paul Azinger is always a good example. He is a little bit fast. And we would look at face rotation, which we've just seen. So this is, I think, a big difference to an amateur. Amateurs have a lot of problem with face rotation. We know that. We discussed this a lot. Now looking at dynamics, you see that he is adding at a level which is entering into the downswing at a level which is higher as in the amateur, but then he is adding even more force. And that's kind of a aggressive type of stroke. We added a little bit of a gray shade in here, if you can see that. So this would be kind of the tour average with a plateau. And the red line, again, steeps up here a little bit for Paul Azinger, because he's adding more force. He's having a type of stroke where he wants to feel some momentum with the putter getting to the ball. He likes this type of putting stroke where he's getting a hard sound from impact, and he hits the ball against the cup to get the sound of the ball getting to the cup. So he loves to be more aggressive. He is not on the very smooth side. We might look at others. I don't know. We just grab out someone from the data sample set here. And this is a very neutral type of stroke, and this is very, very close to what we would say, well, I wouldn't say ideal. You you don't know what is really ideal, but it's very much matching up to what we think is average of what we see in our tour data. Very smooth type of stroke, and you can see from beginning of top of backswing into the downswing, there's a plateau, and you get to this level, to this increased level of acceleration in the forward swing, because you already activate forces before end of backswing. So this curve is more steeply up decelerating to top of backswing, as it normally would do. Well, the moment of impact is always this stripe, this vertical stripe here. This is the moment of impact where you lose this 10 to 12 to maybe 15% of energy or speed. This is impact. And now the question is, where would be the recommended moment of impact? And that's quite an interesting question, and I would need to pop up some other graphs to explain it. Maybe I just try to explain why, to me, I don't have any problem with this type of stroke. So actually, the stripe and impact is not at 50-50. If you look at time, downswing is 800 milliseconds. The center of the stroke is 400, and this is where you typically find a peak of speed on a lower level as before, because you lose energy here. But if you would have no impact, then you would have the maximum speed at 400. So it's symmetric to maximum speed, but maximum speed is not at impact. The 400 milliseconds is exactly where you have the center between acceleration phase and deceleration phase. And now for this player, you see the stripe is quite a bit before he enters the center. So this would be about 35% of time, potentially. We can look at the number. Well, actually, it's 40% of the time. So this is an impact at 40% of the time of the downswing. In tour average, this number is 39% of time. So if you would ask me, where's tour average, I would say 39% of time. If you would ask me what I would recommend, I would recommend something between maybe 35 and 45%. I don't see 50-50, to be honest. I can only see 50-50 if you have a very short putt, and if you on purpose shorten down follow through. That's a specific type of technique on very short putts. But on all the putts where you need to develop feel and release through impact, and where you are naturally going through impact because you want to also have distance control, this could also be a break putt, it could be a putt on a very fast green. I think what I see in almost all of the players, basically 149 of 150, they have an impact which is just before crossing from acceleration to deceleration. Okay. So this is new data in our reports in general. So this different display would be found in all the different reports. It might be tiles of different sizes. And then we have